Is it acceptable to use AI to draft a dating profile? Is it a good idea to have AI draft your resume? Is that okay? Is that not okay? And so at the end of the day, the more informed we are about how something works, the more ethical we can be about using it.
Welcome to AI to Z. Hosted by Airswift's Chief Revenue Officer, Anna Frazzetto, we delve into artificial intelligence, health tech, and more. Tune in and journey with us into the future.
Hi, Megan, and welcome to the show. I wanted to just quickly introduce you to the audience. I love to do a little bit of research before we get started, and I took the liberty of looking at your LinkedIn file, and there were a couple of things that you mentioned in there that I just wanted to share. I love the fact that you talk about being a chief compliance officer and the fact that you have over 17 years of financial service industry experience. You have taken a risk-based approach to growing your networking company, keepwith, which is something I'd love to hear more about. And you spent your career building, designing, implementing, investing, investment management, broker, dealer, banking, insurance compliance, audit and risk programs. You also mentioned that you lead with emotional intelligence, which I think is so critical, especially today in running an organization. But you've been able to optimize, cultivate, and curate long-lasting teams, client and organizational relationships because of that approach. You also mentioned that your superpower is networking, which is, I think, truly a superpower. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna. I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. So why don't we jump right in and talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, which seems to be the biggest hot topic today. You can't pick up a news article or anything in the tech space that doesn't talk about AI. What are the biggest safety concerns you have about the development and use of AI? When we spoke, you mentioned the use of AI for good, which I thought was a great way of putting it.
Well, what a great question. And actually, I just think it's fantastic that you have an AI-focused podcast, because what it does is it allows for conversation around a topic that is getting a lot of buzz. And so oftentimes, if you actually just talk about something, you can get more context. When it comes to safety and artificial intelligence and safety and technology overall, I can't take off my chief compliance officer hat. So I'm now a tech founder, right? But at the end of the day, you want your organization to be safe. You want your data to be safe. You want users on your platform to be safe. And so when it comes to the safety and security of artificial intelligence, it really has to boil down to governance and how it's being executed and how it's being used. You talked about AI for good. And though I spent my whole career in financial services and was a chief compliance officer, I'm now the CEO and founder of a tech company that is literally using technology to help people to connect better. And so we like to say that we're using AI for good because our mission at keepwith is to help people build stronger relationships, right? So the idea that we could be using technology and AI specifically to help people connect more meaningfully at a time when human isolation and loneliness are at their peak and have been declared a health crisis is really important.
Right. So how can we ensure that AI systems are used ethically and responsibly? Because I think that's kind of like the logical next thing to be a little bit concerned about.
Oh, I would say it's a lot to be concerned about because you have all sorts of new questions that need to be answered. How do we use this tech? What do we use it for? What is it? Is it permissible to use or acceptable to use AI to draft a dating profile? I saw that question come up recently. What does that mean? Is it a good idea to have AI draft your resume? Is that okay? Is that not okay? And so at the end of the day, the more informed we are about how something works, the more ethical we can be about using it. And so I think the key is educating ourselves about what AI specifically is and how it can be used.
Right. So now let's talk a little bit about, I want to get into keepwith. What specific steps can organizations take to improve the safety and security of their AI systems? And if you feel comfortable, maybe you can talk about the cool stuff that you're doing with keepwith.
You know, it's interesting. We were recently at the New York Stock Exchange for Tech Summit a couple of weeks ago, and every single technology luminary who spoke was talking about this. And I had an aha moment, which was, it's not the responsibility on a team for one person, for a CISO or a data scientist or a data engineer or the head of technology or the head of cyber to sort of have that responsibility over AI and its safety. It really is a cultural responsibility at the organization. So as we are actually partnering with Airswift to make our tech hires and to build out our tech team at keepwith, we're making sure that every engineer has AI experience, that every engineer has cybersecurity experience, that our CTO and our data scientists and our data engineers and the folks that we are hiring all have that level of acumen and the ability to identify risks as they come up.
Right. So, I think the one thing is when you think about, AI, and this is a common topic that, I've talked to other guests about, is that AI is a tool and it should be utilized as a tool. So going back to your point about, do you use it to craft your resume? Do you use it to make your dating, profile? I think it's a tool. I think it's if you make it like the answer and it to be like the final product and you've only used AI, that's when you start getting into some issues and concerns. And is this, the right way to use the tool? But maybe you can kind of expand on that perspective, Megan.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And any tool comes with it responsibility and thought into how you use that tool and how you use it well. And also what you do organizationally if the tool is not used well. You talked about ethics earlier, and that's where my chief compliance officer hat will never come off. And a mentor of mine is really an ethics luminary, I would say. It's important that organizations that are deploying AI in their tech and are using it are doing it within an ethical framework, that they're doing it for the right reasons, that they're doing it not just unleashing it and then seeing what happens, really just making sure that there is a lot of, that we're paying attention to it. With any tool, when you use a tool, you have to pay attention to it. And with anything new, we want to see we don't yet necessarily know the full power of this. What was amazing about being at Tech Summit at the New York Stock Exchange is seeing all of these applications, how, I am not in the healthcare space, but the healthcare leaders who are speaking were talking about how AI can speed up clinical trials. What an exciting thing. We know that AI can help people build stronger relationships, and we can talk about how we're leveraging that at keepwith. So it is very important when using a tool to, I would say, understand it, to be open-minded to see what happens, and to really stay close to it. But I also think optimism is important. If you look at some of the clickbait that's out there about AI, it's all doom and gloom. And that is really closed-minded. And I don't necessarily think that the right way to think about it. We have powerful technology that can make our lives better. And it's important to make sure that we're using it the right way.
Right. And, Megan, you kind of hit on a couple of things. And I know I've talked about this in the past. It's like when the internet became, public access and everybody thought it was going to be the end of the world to have access to that information. How is that safe? Or when you talk about cloud computing, right? When cloud computing first came into existence, there was like, what, your data? Like, it's going to be exposed. You're going to have security issues. You're going to have breaches. You're going to have all sorts of cybersecurity threats, impossible to set up your own, private, cloud. That'll never work. And here we are. Fast forward, we have AI, which I think is like the logical next big step in technology. And the doom and gloom really started to come out because when AI became more publicly discussed with ChatGPT, and now it created all of a sudden all this nervousness around it. But AI has been in existence for a long time, for, over a decade. And it did not become a doom and gloom scenario until the most recent times because of the, public access. So, Megan, what role do you see government playing in regulating the development and use of AI? Should we be concerned that there could be Big Brother will be too involved? Of course, this reminds me of like Terminator and Skynet. Like, are we at that point that we need to worry?
So, Anna, this is a great question. And I think whenever we're talking about AI and technology more broadly, we need to think about users. We need to think about company and organizational responsibility. And we need to really think about, as you said, the role that government plays. So when we were recently at Tech Summit in New York, we had the opportunity to hear Nitin Natarajan speak. And he is actually the deputy director at Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So it's CISA. It is a federal government entity, but what's really interesting is that CISA doesn't regulate companies. They're actually, in fact, collaborating and partnering with companies on both the cybersecurity fronts and as AI develops. So it is an interesting organization that is actually collaborating with companies, not as Big Brother regulator, not in fact a regulator at all, but rather supporting innovation. So when we're thinking about how to regulate AI or how to regulate technology more broadly, thinking about the role government plays, as you said, which I think should be collaborating with business rather than killing business, the role that organizations play in actually helping people to leverage technology to make their lives better, and then the responsibility that users have to use it and to use it responsibly and ethically, as you said. At the end of the day, my personal belief, this is not a keep with belief, is that government entities are there to keep us safe. And so whether there's a safety risk of physical safety and you have the police department that is, keeping your family safe, whether you have financial regulatory bodies that are making sure that our investment world is kept safe. So, making sure that nefarious actors are kept at bay, making sure that true cyber threats are handled at a time when they're so pervasive is really important. And I think that we need to let governments do what they do to keep us safe, at the same time not hampering innovation. Because we're at this really exciting time. One of my favorite recent AI stories, everyone seems to be talking about how artificial intelligence is going to take their jobs away. And as a single mom who is an entrepreneur, days are busy. And so in a recent mom group that I'm in, somebody talked about how they're leveraging AI to make their day-to-day easier, whether it's just managing tasks, getting things done, so thinking instead of what is all the bad that's going to happen, what is the good that could happen by leveraging new technology is just a way to flip your mindset.
Exactly. I think, everything in moderation, right? There needs to be some involvement to keep us safe, but not, micromanaging all aspects of AI. What are you most excited about for the future of AI in terms of safety and tech?
Well, when it comes to using artificial intelligence, I can speak about how we're using it at keepwith. So we have built a platform that is really air traffic control for people's relationship building. If you want to network to identify a mentor, a mentee, if you want to network to identify other people in your town to make new friends, if you want to network to identify other startup founders that are, raising their Series A round of capital, we're leveraging AI to help people connect better. So I would say that is what I am most excited about. Human isolation and loneliness are at their peak. We have just been through a global health crisis that has left us feeling very isolated. So if technology can actually help us to connect with each other in a more meaningful way to help solve the human isolation crisis, that's what really excites me.
That is true. I also think, when you look at future of AI, what it can do in the medical field, I find fascinating to be able to provide, diagnosis sooner and possibly, save lives sooner because of having AI involved. So, definitely exciting times. What are your thoughts around the safety of existing platforms that people use and how platforms can be made more safe?
So I am really happy that you asked that question, Anna, because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that my daughter can pick up her iPad and she has very limited screen usage and was using an app that I put on there with security controls and yet was still asked for her photograph when she was 6. And she luckily showed it to me, right?
Ugh.
And I like the moment where I'm like, oh my goodness, like digital kidnapping, things that pop into your head. But platforms that currently exist that are meant to help us connect are not necessarily doing that in a way that is allowing us to stay safe. And so I'm worried about that. I'm worried about existing relationship building platforms and the safety and security and privacy of individual users. I'm worried about platforms that purportedly are helping us to connect better that have been shown to be used for human trafficking, that have been shown to have fake profiles. And so I'm very concerned about the safety and security of existing platforms. And as we build keepwith, continue to build it, it's already built, but as we continue to build and expand it, making decisions from where we are now in our journey that take that security and data, that user safety into account from day one so that everybody that we work with Airswift to hire has that security mindset, but a people-focused mindset to make sure that users who are using the platform know they're only talking to actual people and not to nefarious actors or fake users. So I am concerned about the existing platforms that are used for both networking, relationship building, dating even. But I also see there's an opportunity because I think that every technology founder has the responsibility to keep users safe and to do whatever they can to do that. So that's why we're putting safety and security and privacy first as we continue to expand keepwith.
Right. And you bring up, unfortunately, your daughter, thank goodness that she came to you. But I worry about, that teenage to early 20s that are using different platforms and, safety and security are the last things on their mind.
You're absolutely right. And I think that every piece of data that we put out there can be used, right? And that's really important. So it's important for individual users of technology to know kind of where your data goes and how it's being used, but also what to do to protect yourself in terms of what are the settings? Are you using your Wi-Fi network that the passwords and the logins that were signed, or did you go and did you change them? How are you keeping your data safe? What information are you putting out publicly? And you're right that sometimes it's generationally and using platforms, but sometimes people have a varying level of acumen when it comes to security and privacy. There are people of all generations who see something and maybe click on a link. So it is very important when we're thinking about wellness, and that's a core value of mine. It's, your financial wellness, it's your security, there's a lot of aspects to wellness that our security and our safety come into play.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about something very exciting. You were recently invited to be interviewed on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange at this year's New York Stock Exchange Tech Summit 2023, and it was focused on AI. What was that like, and what were your key takeaways?
Oh my gosh. So what an amazing experience. It was a connecting the dots story for another time. But we were invited to the exchange, and it was an incredibly meaningful moment as a founder, as a female founder, as a technology founder, kind of continuing on our journey. We do want to go public someday. And so to even be in the New York Stock Exchange and to be invited was this great, it's funny, we say manifest, but I started saying womanifest in a moment, but to say, hey, we're here now and we're going to be back here in 5 years when we ring the bell. Like, that's really what we want to do. So it was a huge honor, humbling experience. I grew up in New York City of very humble means. And so to be on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange where all the money stuff happens was really a remarkable experience. And to be interviewed about Keepwith's journey and how we're helping people to build relationships. So it was an honor to be invited, amazing to be there, the buzz in the room, one of those core moments that we'll always remember. And, what we're excited about is what we learned there. So, it was great to be invited, and that's a fantastic experience, and to be interviewed. And we are so excited for when that comes out. But to sit there, I feel like we got a half-day AI MBA. And so hearing doctors talk about healthcare and how AI is going to make it easier. I mentioned the clinical trial example earlier, and you talked about that in terms of healthcare, to think about energy and changes in sustainable energy. Again, not my area of subject matter expertise, but to be hearing, Exxon and Chevron and these companies that are really working on those problems, and also the innovative startup founders. So to be at Tech Summit, the stock exchange clearly has technology innovation at the top of its list, and there hadn't been an in-person Tech Summit since before COVID. But the amount that we learned about how the technology is advancing, how it's helping across industry and sector, the importance of security around it, and sort of the role that government can play in helping to support companies through that journey. It was just a tremendous honor to be included.
That's fantastic. That is such a great story, and a great building block for Keep With, right? To part of your journey.
Absolutely. And we know as a startup, right, you always want to be looking forward. And it's validating to have those moments where you're like, hey, we're at the big kid table. And to have been at the big kid table at the New York Stock Exchange was a really good milestone for us.
Excellent. Well, Megan, this kind of brings us to the end of the podcast, but I would love to leave the audience with, if you were to leave them with one power word, what would it be?
One power word. Oh, that is such a great question. I'm going to go with yet. My favorite word is yet. And when I say I haven't done blah, blah, blah yet, or, oh, that's really interesting. I haven't seen that yet. I haven't learned that yet. I haven't heard of that yet. So my power word, we haven't figured out the full optimization of AI yet. So yet would be my power word.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's a great word. Thank you so much, Megan. You've left the audience with a bunch of great golden nuggets. So look forward to talking to you some more.
Thank you so much, Anna, for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the AI to Z podcast with Anna Frizzetto. If you found value in today's episode, consider following for more insightful STEM discussions. We'll be back with another deep dive. Until then.